Hey, in this video I want to talk about the diminishment of freedom or the decrease in freedom that's been occurring throughout the years actually. I think probably the main reasons for it, some of them are very politically incorrect, so I will not say them because I will get my channel terminated, so I can't share my thoughts on that. But other ones I can share, and one of the ones that I can share is that the decrease in testosterone levels in men has led to men acting just weaker in general and more emotionally in general and taking less risks. I think that someone like me takes less good risks than somebody who would have been my equivalent but with a higher testosterone level in the past. And you might say, oh, that's a great thing, there's less people getting into fights and things like that. Sure, there are some benefits to it, but there's also a lot of downsides. Like, for example, males and females are supposed to be opposites, right? Opposites are supposed to attract. But then when the men become more like females, and then the females are programmed to becoming more like men, there's a lot less attraction between the genders, as one example. And then another area where that impacts things is when it comes to standing up against governmental decisions. For example, back in the day, the entire American Revolution was based off the 2% tax that the government imposed on tea. So that's when correct me if I'm wrong, but that's when something called the Boston Tea Party was created. People were throwing tea into the ocean, and people just started to revolt in general because they said that it was unacceptable that there was a 2% tax. And look at where we're at today. The tax is more than 40 times what it was back then, and nobody says anything about it. Nobody complains about it. Everybody just pretends like it's not a problem. Everybody hates it. Literally, everybody hates it. But they just pretend like everything's okay. They don't try to do anything about it. And why don't they try to do anything about it? Because there's risk involved. You can even look at some things that happened in Canada during recent years, especially because in Canada, it's even more so the case that there's less freedom than in the United States, because at least in the United States, there's freedom of speech. In Canada, people were protesting the COVID lockdown measures, which were absolutely ridiculous. There was that trucker protest, and then the government came in and deemed them as national terrorists. It's unbelievable. It's a complete fraud, complete scam of a government. Apparently, recently, there has been new evidence released. I'm not sure how accurate this information is. I only heard it secondhand because I literally try not to follow the news, guys. I try not to look at the news because it's just so negative, and so much of it is just bullshit trying to program you. But apparently, the Chinese government helped the current prime minister in Canada get into power for 2 election terms in a row. The current prime minister did nothing about it. He knows about it. He was questioned about it recently, and there has been no pushback against the prime minister for this evidence that has come to light. And it really illustrates the state of being of the people in the country and the state of affairs of the government and large organizations in the country. Returning back to freedom in general, we can look at the amount of things that people are allowed to express there are certain opinions that are okay. If you have those opinions, it's actually not just okay. It's virtue signaling. When people share those opinions, they're like, oh, I'm such a good person. And they promote these opinions on social media. They blast it out. I cannot say what things I'm specifically referring to, because once again, my channel will be terminated, because society has gone to that point where you can't even share your opinions about certain things, right? So I hope you know what I'm referring to, but the odds are that you probably don't even know what I'm referring to, because I have to be so vague about it. But basically, some things are pushed so much by society, and the differing opinions are just demonized and silenced, and people who hold those opinions in Canada in particular are arrested. Their whole lives are ruined for thinking wrong. How fucked up is that? For thinking wrong and for holding your own beliefs. It's supposed to be a country where people can have the beliefs that they choose, pretty much. Like, okay, if your beliefs are that you should be a murderer, that's like a totally different thing. But everything except fucked up belief systems like that is supposed to be allowed. But in reality, it's not the case. There's just so much deception and lies going on. It's like George Orwell's book, 1984. It's like doublespeak from that book. It's happening. It's already here. Doublespeak is already here. People say one thing and they mean one different thing all the time. And now it's not just in the people's language, it's in the governmental legislations as well. And here's the even crazier part. Now the governments and large organizations are basically choosing what people think. You can basically say it's the governments, because the governments enforce some regulations and laws, and they influence the culture greatly by influencing large organizations. They give certain rules for the large organizations to follow, for mostly social media companies, and then like YouTube, and then social media companies decide to go along with the culture, except for those small ones like Rumble, but all the major ones, they go along with what the government says, and they impose the same rules upon their users. And by doing so, only certain opinions and certain types of content make it out into the public sphere for two reasons. Number one, because not people only want to hear kind of things that confirm their beliefs. This is not really the main point, but they only want to hear things that confirm their beliefs, right? So they don't want to hear different opinions. They don't want to hear new ideas of thought, because most people are just brainless and they're just scrolling social media mindlessly most of the day, just wasting their energy, wasting their time, literally burning their life forces away, absolutely wasting it. And then, so basically, they don't want to hear those different opinions, and because of YouTube and those other platforms are trying to make the people using the platforms as entertained as possible, they push some content that they know that the people viewing will like, and they actively suppress new content. Like, why do you think my channel is still so small? That's a big part of it, because they actually suppress people's content. If I was making some mindless entertainment videos, I think it would be a lot easier for me to pop off and to grow this channel exponentially very quickly. Like, I'm not making excuses, I'm just saying, if I went ahead and did that, I think my channel would grow really quickly, but I would know that I'm actively hurting people, basically, because when they would be watching my content, they would just be wasting their time. I would be in it just for the money. There would be not too much joy in it for me. Okay, it would be fun, I guess, but there would not be much fulfillment in it for me. I wouldn't feel content with myself because I would know that what I was doing is not actually providing a positive impact on the world, it's providing, I'll say, a neutral impact on the world, since those people were going to waste their time watching some entertainment content anyways. But anyways, enough of that. The other thing is that people, what was I going to say? So basically, some content, oh yeah, here we go. So some content is actively pushed out by YouTube algorithms and the main social media companies' algorithms. Other content is suppressed, and other content is suppressed not just in terms of who views it, but also in terms of if it's even allowed to be viewed, or if it's going to be banned off of the platform entirely. Now, there have been certain people who this has happened to. Their content was banned entirely from one platform or from multiple platforms, as we have seen in some situations recently. And the reason for that is because the social media companies are just conforming to what they think people want. And they don't care about the general well-being of what's actually good for people. It's like McDonald's. McDonald's could serve healthy food, right? But what makes them money? It's the junk food that they sell. It's the shit that kills people. They're selling poison to people. So people willingly buy the poison, sell to them, and that's how they make money. So some people are actively not allowed to post content, and through this process of pushing out certain content, suppressing other content, banning certain content, only certain ideas make it out into the public realm of thought. Now, because only certain ideas make it into the public realm of thought, they basically control people's minds, because most people don't think for themselves anymore, sadly. Like when I'm on this camera here, I'm thinking for myself. I don't have any script here. I don't have any stimulus providing me information and input on what I can say. And this is not the only time that I think for myself, because I have actually been actively trying to cut down my internet usage and the amount of time that I waste, and I've been very successful in doing so, I'm happy to say. And I know that from what I was like before, I was not thinking critically. I thought I was thinking critically, and I thought I had my own opinions, but I did not. I was just addicted to the internet. You can't even go 5 minutes of being bored. People don't even want to go for more than a second of being bored. They just pull out their phone. They have the ability to feel bored, and they choose not to feel that because they don't have to. If they don't have to, why would they go through that discomfort? For me, I choose to go through that discomfort because I know what else it comes with. I know the things that come with that type of lifestyle. I see what type of life the average person lives. Okay, so anyways, the types of thoughts that are actually let into the public sphere are only of a limited type. So it's basically mostly the thoughts that it's either the thoughts that the government and the large corporations want people to see, or it's the thoughts and ideas that they let people see. The other ideas are not even considered. They're not even on the table. They're not even in people's consciousness. They don't, to normal people, they don't even exist. And why is that? Because the ideas are banned. It's crazy. Let that sink in for a second. It shows you the state of what we're living through. And when only certain ideas are proposed, and then you hear the same idea again and again and again, you start to believe it. The Soviet Union is a great example of this. My family lived through the Soviet Union. I was lucky to never have to, but I know about it. And it was horrible. There were a lot of horrible things. From my home country, more than 30 million people were starved to death in Holodomor because it was a man-made starvation. Russia decided that they had the right to take Ukraine's grain. So they went and they pillaged all the Ukrainian farmers' food and left them with absolutely nothing. They didn't even leave them a single grain of rice to feed themselves with. And 30 million people starved to death. It was one of the biggest massacres in history. That might even be more than the Holocaust, actually, if you look into it. Because, not to say that it doesn't exist, but sometimes the numbers in the Holocaust of what people think it occurred is inflated. The numbers aren't actually as high. I think Holodomor has a higher amount of casualties than the persecution of the Jews, which obviously is a very bad thing that happened, or morally wrong thing. So basically, I know nobody's even at this point in the video. Everybody's already clicked off the video. If you're still watching the video, then I'm impressed. I'm not gonna lie. You impress me because most people would not be watching the video at this point. So at this point, I'm pretty much assuming that I'm talking to myself, but I'm still gonna be coherent when I share these points, and I'm gonna try to make it interesting. So they control the thoughts that people can have, and they have the ability to produce propaganda at an astounding rate. You can look at certain events that have happened within the last few years, not naming anything specific, not naming anything that had a very low chance of doing harm to people who got it, and it made a lot of people stuck in one place and they couldn't move around. Yeah, good luck with picking that up with what I said in those vague terms. AI. So even with that, right? People didn't believe it at first. They were told one thing at the beginning. They were told, oh, this is a very temporary thing and it's not serious. And then the messaging came at them. They heard the message one time. They heard the message 2 times. They heard the message 2,000 times. They heard the message 200,000 times. It was playing everywhere. Every time you turned on the news, you receive the same message. Every time you go on your phone, there are ads for the same message. There are a bunch of videos with the same message. There's videos with opinion opposite to the mainstream opinion, and they're suppressed and demonized. There's people who went out and protested against it, and they were suppressed and demonized. Returning once again to the government's actions against the truckers, right? Same thing. That's exactly what I'm talking about, actually. It's just connecting the dots a little bit, because these things are having quite a bit of a cause and effect relationship. So if they can just spew out propaganda like that and people just eat it up, they eat up all the garbage because they're on their phones and addicted to the internet and device usage, electronic usage anyways, then that propaganda, of course, is going to affect them. Of course. And especially when they don't want to critically think and make their own opinions because they have been conditioned to do that. And then when you consider the fact that it's uncomfortable and unconventional to hold an opinion, and then when you also consider the fact that everybody just wants everything to be okay all the time, so people will literally delude themselves. It's what's called cope, right? People will literally delude themselves into avoiding facing reality. They would rather live in delusional fantasy land than to face reality. Because why is that? Because they will feel better in the moment. Because hearing the truth a lot of the time is painful, it's difficult, and it's necessary to grow. People don't care about that last part. They don't care about their personal growth, the growth of their character, their soul. Hell, look at the obesity epidemic. It's a perfect analogy. Being obese is not just aesthetically bad. It's objectively unhealthy. It makes you ugly and sexually undesirable, and it shortens people's lives. And it also reduces their life quality while they still are alive, until their arteries get clogged up and that kills them. That's just facts. And people will delude themselves, saying, oh, you're fat shaming me. I'm not fat shaming anybody. Actually, I am. I don't care. That clip can get taken out of context. But it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, being fat is objectively ruining your life in a lot of ways. And it's so easy not to get fat. Like, honestly, it blows my mind that people let themselves get fat and they just mess up their lives just like that. Because I'm not saying that you have to be like a supermodel shape or super fit or anything like that. It's just not messing up your life to just be not fat. It's not hard. It's really not. So when you consider that as an analogy for how many people, that's already around 40% of the population, they will choose comfort over life itself, experiencing life. They don't even experience life. Guys, if you're not actively ruining your life by eating junk food and by looking at content all the time and using alcohol or drugs or weed, you're already above 50% of the population easily, just like that. You're probably gonna be rising up in the, like when you compare people overall, you're gonna be rising up so quickly, so fast, just by not doing things. That's without even doing anything, without even exercising or anything like that. You just become better than so many people who are actively fucking up their lives. Isn't that crazy? And then, okay, so people are susceptible to the messaging of the government and large organizations. And then they choose what messaging they receive. So how easy is it to change people's opinions? Look at certain opinions that have changed within the last 20 years, where the country has done a complete 180, a whole flip, and now the whole culture shifted and you can't say certain things. They're trying to kill humor. You're not even allowed to joke about things. A lot of things. And the public opinion and belief system has absolutely reversed on many things. And you can even look at the last 3 years. It's drastically changed the last 3 years. Now people don't even believe in basic human rights and personal freedoms anymore. Let that sink in. We were locked inside of our houses and barely anybody said anything against it. The people who did say things against it, the police force used excessive force, and they basically were told by the government to do that, and they suppressed people's freedom to express themselves and supported such a stupid, absolutely ludicrous position. And people are going to say that I'm misinformed. No, I'm not. Because I actually critically think and I've actually done my research. Have you? Or do you get your opinions from Twitter? Do you do your research on Twitter? So, I don't have too much more to say, but I'm just going to say that basically at this point, the government and larger organizations choose what people think because they curate the content that people receive, and people just eat that shit up. They are on that content all the time. That's actually why I'm making this video, because I know that there's a lack of supply for how much people are viewing the internet. Like, I don't even edit. That's the problem. I don't even edit my videos. But anyways, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't done so. And if you're here, because if you're still here at this point, I know that you're going to want to see more content like this. So go ahead and do that. And I'm out. Peace.